5 disgusting royals who never bathed. Imagine gold, luxury, a throne, and the smell of an unwashed body. Kings ruled empires, built palaces, wore diamonds, but avoided water like fire. For some of them, the bath was not a source of purity, but a gateway to death. Yes, in ancient times, it was believed that bathing was dangerous. Today we will tell you about 5 royals who almost never bathed, and were even proud of it. Subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the most disgusting and interesting fact from history that will not be shown in textbooks. Louis XIV, Sun King, France. In the center of the majestic Versailles, among gilding, mirrors, and endless balls, lived Louis XIV, the king who considered himself the chosen one of the sun. He dictated fashion, changed politics, seduced women, but was a total noob with soap and water. Yes, this greatest monarch of France almost never washed. Louis believed that water opens pores, and therefore lets diseases into the body. That is why he took a bath only in extreme cases. But even washing was minimized. Instead of washing, perfume. Lots of perfume. Louis XIV adored smells. He had separate perfumers who would choose perfumes for him based on his mood, day of the week, and even political events. Sometimes he would change 3 to 4 shirts a day to cleanse himself through fabric, not water. What is interesting is that the entire Versailles was built without a sewer system. Yes, sophisticated ladies and nobles defecated behind curtains, in fireplaces, or right on the stairs. The smell in the palace was such that even ambassadors from England and Austria wrote in their diaries. Incredible beauty and incredible stench. But Louis himself seems not to have felt it, or pretended not to feel it. He was convinced that his body was the embodiment of divine power, and if it stinks, then perhaps it should be so. By the way, doctors of the time supported these ideas. Water could indeed be a source of infection, because then no one boiled it, had no plumbing, and did not know about bacteria. As a result, cleanliness was considered almost barbaric at the French court. And it was Louis XIV who set this fashion. It is better to stink of roses from a bottle than to be clean and wet. When Louis XIV was embalmed after his death, his body decomposed so quickly that even the undertaker refused to take it. Maybe it was worth taking a shower at least once a year, after all. Isabella I of Castile, Spain. Imagine a queen who rules a great state, decides the fate of entire nations, changes history, but fundamentally does not touch water. This is not fiction. This is Isabella of Castile, one of the most influential women in European history. She united Spain, supported the Inquisition, financed the expeditions of Christopher Columbus. But when it came to taking a bath, she said a resolute no. According to legend, Isabella did not like to wash herself so much that she took a bath only twice in her entire life, at birth and before marriage. The rest of the time, she lived in her own body, like in a fortress made of dirt and prayers. The reason? Deep religiosity. She was convinced that water was an unclean element that could bring demons into the body. And a naked body, even if no one sees it, is already a sin before God. To wash is to open not only the pores, but also the soul to devilish temptations. An unclean body is a pure soul. Isabella replaced washing with prayers, dry wiping, and changing her underwear. Some sources describe that she walked around in clothes that were taken off her literally once every few months, and her servants got so used to the stench that they stopped noticing it. In Versailles, the stench was masked with perfume. In England, with wine. And in Spain, at Isabella's court, with patience and piety. There are records that at the end of her life her body decomposed even before death, due to skin infection and a complete lack of care. When she was to be reburied after her death, witnesses spoke of a stench that made even priests faint. But this woman was canonized as a saint, made a symbol of a united Spain, and honored as God's sword against impurity. Irony? Perhaps. But for Isabella, purity was not external. James I, England. Early 17th century. The throne of England is occupied by James I, a wise scholar, translator of the Bible, thinker, and at the same time, a man who was panicky afraid of washing. This king went down in history as the one who approved the King James Bible, united England and Scotland, and left behind an important cultural legacy. And also, a terrible stench, because James I refused to wash his body, face or head for years. He firmly believed, a clean body is a house for disease. Any contact with water, he believed, opened pores through which diseases, poisons, and evil spirits could enter the body. His hygiene was limited to a partial wiping of his hands with a cloth, and that was it. He never brushed his teeth, washed his hair, or changed his bed linen for months. His bedroom resembled more of an alchemist's cave than a royal chamber. Musty air, stains on the sheets, and scattered food scraps. But the worst part was his stinking shoes, which he rarely took off. His feet were covered in ulcers, and, according to eyewitnesses, they gave off a smell that overpowered the smell of soot and the animals that ran around the palace. His servants rubbed his shoes with vinegar and rose petals, not to make them shine, but simply to keep him from passing out. And although he was well-read and intelligent, his fear of water bordered on religious paranoia. He was convinced that washing had caused the plague epidemics of previous years, so he strictly forbade even his loved ones from entering the water. Mary I, England. When you hear the name Bloody Mary, you imagine something terrifying. Torture, fire, inquisition, executions. But there's another thing that is less well-known, but no less shocking. She almost never washed. Mary I Tudor, the first reigning queen of England, daughter of Henry VIII. The woman who returned Catholicism to the kingdom with an iron fist and ordered heretics to be burned by the hundreds. At the same time, her body remained a symbol of dirt, fear, and superstition. According to contemporaries, Mary almost never took baths. The reason is the fear of water, brought up by religious severity and old medieval ideas. Water is a temptation, washing the body is a path to depravity, and nudity is a direct path to sin. She considered it better to wipe herself with vinegar or rub herself with fragrant herbs than to risk contact with river or rainwater. Scented handkerchiefs, wine instead of water, sweat under the layers of royal robes. All these were part of her daily life. Her courtiers often complained about the suffocating smell in her chambers. A Spanish envoy wrote, "Her Majesty seems to fear water as much as the foul word." Irony? Maria was obsessed with purifying the souls of others, but she herself lived in a body that knew no soap. Her face was always pale, with rashes outlined by lead-based makeup, another toxic fad of the time. When she was dying, doctors couldn't even touch her body without bandages on her face. The smell was worse than the flames of an execution. But the people remember her as the tormentor of heretics, not as the tormentor of her own body. The people believe that if you repeat the name Bloody Mary 3 times in front of a mirror, her ghost will appear. Charles V, Holy Roman Empire. His empire was so huge that they said, the sun never sets on his dominions. And indeed, Charles V ruled not only the Holy Roman Empire, but also Spain, the Netherlands, part of Italy, and the New World. But despite this, his personal hygiene remained somewhere in the Dark Ages. Charles V avoided bathing like heretics. He firmly believed that water was harmful to health, and washing was a weakness that weakened the body and spirit. His daily practice consisted of cleansing his hands with a piece of cloth soaked in wine or vinegar. The rest of his body remained as it was in the morning. And yesterday, and a week ago, eyewitnesses wrote that he had not washed his head for years, and his hair had turned into a mass resembling a stuck helmet. His feet, which were hardly ventilated in heavy shoes, were often covered with ulcers. But the emperor only smiled and believed that the body is only a shell, and the main thing is the spirit and God. Paradoxically, the best doctors in Europe came to his court, and most of them supported Charles, because in those days, doctors themselves believed that washing provokes diseases, and hot water softens the brain. When Charles V retired from politics and settled in a monastery, He prayed and fasted daily, but never bathed. He met his death pale, with pus on his skin, and in the full belief that never touching water was the highest form of piety.